My name is Greg, as Priscilla mentioned, my name is Greg Mortimer. I'm the Chief Information Technology Officer here at the district, and I'm also here with Perry Movick, who's the manager of our infrastructure services team. And so we've prepared a brief presentation that we want to share with you all. So I'm switching over to sharing that now. And here we go. Okay, so as I'm guessing most of the folks on this call are aware, we're here to talk about the 2.54 asset protection, the IT portion on this. And basically, what this has to do with, for the monitoring report, is for our key systems, reporting out to the district if we've met the uptime requirements that we've set out in the report. And so our goal for each area is that we have for our core services, for our network, for the key applications that we have on the network, including our student information system, our PeopleSoft, our finance and HR systems, et cetera. We're shooting for at least 99% uptime during the reporting period. And one of the things that's worth noting is that for the purposes of this report, we're talking about uptime, the availability of those services during the school day. And so, and actually our uptime percentages would be even higher if that was measured on a 24/7 period. But we have met the uptime goals for at least 99% uptime for our key systems throughout the district. And so one of the things that we thought would be helpful for just raising some awareness about some of the key portions of how we go about the operations of IT is to talk through a little bit our process for measuring outages when they occur and how we respond to those. And then we also have a kind of a special section on the next slide, some key information in an area that we have a lot of concern around, making sure that we're prepared for, and that is protecting the district against cybersecurity attacks, right? So first off, do want to mention this. We have a pretty well-established process right now within the IT department when there's some sort of outage, like for instance, if maybe there's a network outage or application is down for a certain amount of time. We have a pretty well-established process on our IT team now for responding to that. And so basically, as the IT team becomes aware of any sort of outage, whether it's something that has been noticed by our customers yet, in other words, our customers being parents, student, staff, parents, student, and staff, what we do is we have an incident document. This is just a Google document that has the key information that we capture in response to that, to whatever outage that we might be experiencing. And so the team is now very well conditioned. When there is a response, when there is an outage, one of the first things that we do is start and we share out one of these Google documents to track what's going on. And so that, of course, includes like just an executive summary, a few statements in terms of what the outage might be. Like, say, for instance, if there was, if we had a network outage, we'd want to just mention specifically, the inability for folks, if there's a network issue, the inability for folks to reach the services that they might need on our network, whether it's an application, whether it's a phone system or anything like that. And then we identify who on our team has noticed the outage. We put that information on the incident response form, including what time that happened. And then this becomes like a living document that we work through as the team responds to whatever outage might be occurring there. And so we'll include on that document a timestamp as we become aware of different issues with any particular incident. And then we'll record when that outage started, and then also when it ended. And then we immediately, as part of that process, we'll be looking at identifying what the root cause is for whatever the outage might be. And then also included in that document would be what we did to resolve that, any sort of mitigation effects, and then also we talk through lessons learned. And then after that, every Thursday at what we call our Change Authority Board meeting, it's a meeting when we have staff from throughout IT who get together and talk through any changes that we need to make to our technology environment. If there were any incidents the week before, we'll review those as a group and review if there are any sort of lessons learned and changes to our practice that we might need to make as a result of any of the outages that may have occurred. And then we'll assign people to follow up on that and also assign due dates. And so that's our process for responding to an incident. And then Perry has put together a really good process for, as the incidents occur, he marks and he records the amount of downtime and keeps those stats going on close to a real-time basis, so that when it comes time to report out on any sort of outages for the monitoring report, he's ready to provide that information very quickly. And so I kind of did a quick pass there, talking to those key points. Perry is the person who most of the time leads our efforts to respond to any sort of outages. So I want to pause for a moment. Perry, are there any key points that I've missed or anything else that you'd want to add to what I've shared to this point?
Yeah, Greg, thanks for that overview. I think you covered it pretty well. I would just emphasize a point that you made, that this is a pretty vetted and used process within IT. And typically during an outage, one of the first things that does get created is the incident doc, so we can record information real time as it's going on. And with that document, we can collaborate throughout IT. So as people discover things, it's put into the document right away. So it's a process that we use quite extensively.
So thank you, Perry. Now I'm going to go ahead and click to the second slide of our deck. It's an extensive 2-slide deck. We do want to call out, a couple different things here. First off, in terms of the last reporting period, so for the last fiscal year, one of the things we also report out was, did we have any lost data? And we did not have any lost data during that time, for which we're grateful. And then the other part, we want to provide some emphasis here, because this is the area within IT that we are, I'd say, the most focused on in terms of positioning ourselves to try to minimize the chance of additional outages. And that would be the area around cybersecurity. And so Perry's put together some good statistics here. I want to call out a couple of these or actually provide some additional context. Since the start of the pandemic in 2020, when with K-12, like so many other industries, when we had to make a very rapid switch from 100%, people working in buildings, whether it's schools or whether it's centrally here at the Educational Support Center, had to transition very quickly to remote. And that meant that we had to roll out all kinds of technology very quickly within a matter of weeks or months. And as a part of that, cybersecurity folks around the world decided to target K-12 from a cybersecurity perspective. And during that time, there have been a dramatic increase in the number of cyber attacks against school districts. And so Perry's provided some of the numbers there that since 2016, over 1,300 school districts have reported some type of cyber event. By the way, one of the things that we know from cybersecurity experts is that there's a lot of events that are probably go unreported. And there's a couple recent ones that are worth calling out. Last August, within the cybersecurity community, there was warnings sent out to school districts around the country that during Labor Day weekend, they expected to see an increase in the amount of cyber attacks from around the world, especially from places like Russia, China, and other folks like that. And sure enough, the second largest school district in the country, LA United, was hit with a serious cyber attack, what we call a ransomware attack, where data was stolen. And then the district was asked to pay money to be able to get that data back. And then just recently, you may have noticed more locally in the papers, Denver Public Schools had a cyber incident, a breach that was reported a couple weeks ago, or not even quite 2 weeks ago, where from the middle of December through the middle of January, somebody had been able to hack into their network and steal all kinds of very sensitive information about roughly 15,000 current and former employees. And so those are just a couple of recent incidents. And, I'd say every school district, certainly in this state, probably throughout the country, one of the top areas of focus from IT staff is to try to make the term that we use in the cybersecurity world is to harden our technology environments. In other words, to try to provide the best cybersecurity possible. And so when it comes to Adams 12, I feel very fortunate in that leadership here has been generous in terms of providing staff so that we have a cybersecurity team of 5 folks. That's higher than normal for most K-12 organizations, especially as we try to prioritize very constrained resources. And so we have a strong cybersecurity team. And so that team is, we've also runs what we call the Security Operations Center, or a SOC. And so close to a 24/7 hour period, they are monitoring any sort of potential threats to our network, and then are prepared to respond and pull people in as needed to do that. And as you can see on this deck that we put together here, there's all kinds of ways that cybersecurity bad actors can try to hack into our network. That can be through something called a denial of service, where they just flood our network with so much traffic that it basically makes the network inaccessible. It can include phishing, where somebody sends out what appears to be a legitimate email and convinces people to give up their login credentials, and then just downright cyber attacks. And Perry and his team and the cybersecurity team are able to measure real time the number of attacks that are coming against our network. And I forgot the most recent, but we're talking somewhere between 20 and I think 40 million attacks per day that come our way just in a normal school network. And so, Perry's team and the cybersecurity team do a lot to try to prevent that. We're also, there's challenges around student and staff devices. If some of those get stolen, if folks get access to information that's on there, information breaches in an environment like ours, with over 30,000 students and all students having access to a laptop, all staff having access to a laptop, and the myriad of applications being used out there, there's a lot of work to do to try to secure our network. And so, that comes from just having a cybersecurity team, implementing strong cybersecurity technology and best practices, and then also focusing on training to students. And you know what? I just better check here pretty quickly. I think we have about five or so minutes left in the time that's been allotted to us. Just covered a fair amount of material. What I'm thinking we should do is, Perry, do you have anything else you want to add to this? And then pause if there's questions from people on the call.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, I think you did a great job covering that. So I think we'll just reserve the remaining time for any questions.
Yep, thank you, Perry. So.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Perry. That was a lot of information, but I think really important and very interesting information. So FAC members, what questions might you have? Kathy, I think you're muted.
Oh, am I still?
There you go.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
It took a second because I clicked it and then anyway. So yeah, thank you for the presentation. I guess because this is really not in my wheelhouse at all, my question would be, I'm glad that you feel you have good support from leadership in the district. I guess my question would be, what else do you need, or are we on an okay path to maintain this high level of security for our staff and students?
So how about this, Perry? I'll take it first, pass at that, and then ask Perry to fill this in a little bit more. So one of the things, Perry and I were chatting a couple of weeks ago, or sometime fairly recently, and we talk about the security landscape now compared to, say, 3 years ago. And it's almost laughable about 3 years ago, what our concern around cybersecurity versus now the threats are so much higher. And so we never want to pretend like we have, like the best security around. And really almost any network, if somebody wants to hack in and they focus on that long enough, they will find a way. And so what I feel grateful for is that we have, the district has made resources available for staffing and tools and so forth. But with as many challenges as we have with so many students, staff, and also parents logging into our systems, we never feel 100% confident that we'll be able to thwart every attack. And so one of the things that we are also just about ready to present to senior leadership via the cabinet is, we've been working on something called an incident response plan. And so that is, if we do get hit with a major cyber attack, and here would be kind of the worst case scenario, we get hit with a ransomware attack and somebody is able to break in, they steal our data, they lock it up, and then they demand a ransom. By the way, here's a fairly typical scenario. A couple of years ago, Broward County in Florida with 200,000 students, they were the victim of a ransomware attack, and the negotiations started at $40 million to be able to get that data back, right? And so what we want to be able to do, I think the biggest piece we've been lacking, and that we're just about ready to kind of surface up and for awareness with senior staff in the district, is if we do get hit by an attack, do we have a plan in place that we have practiced so that we can respond to that attack? And that could include a number of different things. Like, first off, if we fall victim to an attack, who do we need to reach out to on our senior leadership team? Do we have a rough communication plan in place that we can modify depending on what the situation is? Have we thought through, at least for a first pass, what the district's stance would be on whether or not to pay that ransom? All those kind of non-technical issues that we want to be able to think through and practice ahead of time, so that we're not trying to figure that out real time in the event of some sort of attack. And so I would say that that's the biggest gap that we're working on now. And Priscilla and others on cabinet are glad that we're doing that. And pretty soon I need to report back to cabinet with the progress that we've made to this point. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's, I think it's great. It's a good idea to run those kinds of drills, because you go into reflex mode rather than, losing time to planning in the moment. When if you plan ahead, then you can execute faster.
Yeah, and Kathy, I'll mention, one time last spring, I think it was right around a year ago now, during a routine network upgrade, we had some challenges where it actually took down the network for a few hours. It was later in the day. And Perry's team was struggling as best they could to get the network back up. And so that evening, I was having conversations with Joe Ferdani, our communications team, Bo Fobert, our CAO, and others. It's like, if we can't get up the network tomorrow, can we have class tomorrow? And in the stress of that moment, we were trying to figure that out, right? And so thankfully the network did come back up, but that very much drew attention to, we've got to have that incident response plan in place in case something were to happen. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
Does your incident response plan contract out with third-party agencies for help should it get over your head? And then the second question to that is, does the district have any of the insurance that's offered for protection against some of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we do, our incident response plan does have in place, processes for reaching out to third-party entities. And that's primarily actually the Department of Homeland Security. And they have folks who are ready to step in and help with, on the technical side, the school districts respond to incidents as they occur. So we definitely have that in place. And then the second part of the question, can you repeat that? I forgot.
Yeah. Does the district have any of the insurance against things like ransomware attacks?
Yes, we do have cybersecurity insurance. And so we're grateful for that. One of the things that I think is good about cybersecurity insurance as well is it pushes districts and other organizations to make sure that our security best practices are where they should be. Like, say, for instance, one of the things that is starting to emerge is that districts will need to demonstrate that they have training programs in place. And so we do have training programs in place that we are looking to evolve, but it's not just training, but then also, the ability to show that we're following industry standard best practices, et cetera, right? And so it's an always moving target. And I think cybersecurity helps us keep our eye on the ball, that if we don't meet some of those minimum requirements, then we can't get insurance, right? So,
yeah. And that was a key reason I asked that question, actually, was that last point you just made.
Yeah,
Did you have something to add?
just to elaborate on a couple of the things that you mentioned with response. A couple of our providers do provide off-hours monitoring and response, and so we get alarms, and they're able to take some action just based on the type and level of attack that they see. Plus, we also have a retainer with another cybersecurity firm here local. It's a national firm, they have resources locally that we can reach out to in the event of an attack. And then just real quickly on the insurance, I'll mention one of our challenges, and everyone today needs cybersecurity insurance, but the challenge is the cybersecurity insurance actually slows the dissemination of information if an attack happens. And that's largely because the industry doesn't want to publish information about a playbook for an attack at another entity. So while we would be very interested in what actually happened at Denver Public Schools and Los Angeles Unified School District, we'll never really know the root cause, because that information, just will never be shared out by the cyber security insurance firms.
And thank you, Perry. And Priscilla and Sonia, I'm looking at, I think we might be at time, but did we go too long?
No, you guys are just fine. Any other questions for Greg and Perry before we move on? Okay, Greg, Perry, thank you so much. Really appreciate your thoughtful presentation. This is obviously a super important topic for us as we do everything that we can to keep our school district safe and the data and privacy of our staff and students safe. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, next we're going to begin to move into our 5C mill levy review. So we are being joined by Anthony Muck, who is our Director of Safety and Security, and Crystal Dawson, who is a member of our IT team, to begin to talk about use of those funds and how they have benefited the school district. So Anthony, let's start with you kind of introducing yourself, maybe a quick synopsis of your job responsibility, and then kind of update us on use of our 5C funds.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, what section of the report is this? Do you know, Sonia, do you know the number?
This is the 5C spending review, and then next month we'll have a presentation created and just go through that with the FAC. So this is informational.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Good question, Kathy.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name's Anthony Muck. I'm the Director of Safety and Security here for Adams 12. Part of my role, as well as my team's role, is to provide security throughout the district. Real briefly, my team's made up of an emergency manager, a security manager, security liaison who's out in the schools, as well as a threat assessment coordinator. So amongst our team, we're constantly working with all the schools around the district to help provide any additional resources, liaison with law enforcement, liaison with the schools, and overall to provide a safe and secure environment for our staff and our students. And that brings us into the 5C spending. Over the years, we've used some of our 5C money to add additional campus supervisors to our schools. The thought behind that was when we had after school events, high school sports, stuff like that, some of these campus supervisors would be able to be there, provide additional security for the school, help with that, as well as some of our larger high school campuses. They have so many exterior doors, so we would provide more bodies that would be able to check doors, ensure that our doors are locked, our doors are shut, just more eyes on the ground, more adults in the building, hopefully providing a more secure environment. Some additional funding that we've used is for our card access system. As you may be aware, when our high school students come into or start their high school years, we provide them with a card, and that card provides them access into our buildings. So we're replenishing cards. Kids that lose their cards, we're constantly keeping that. So every year we're having to order more cards that we can hand out to the district to make sure that all of our students have access. With that comes ordering of more lanyards, more card protectors, some of those necessities that are needed for the protection of our card access, to help students obviously not, excuse me, not lose them and be readily available when needed. Along those same lines, we're just adding additional card access to our schools. We're finding that some locations are not using all of the doors or actually using additional doors to gain entry into a school, and having a card access not only speeds up being able to get in, but it's also an ease when it comes to having any type of a secure door. We don't have to worry about having a physical key in hand. They come in, they can swipe their card and gain access as long as they have access to that building. So it speeds up that response as well as makes them getting into the building. We're also looking at adding additional cameras throughout the district at buildings. And I'll let Crystal Dawson go into some of that more in detail, but we're just trying to get more cameras up, provide more coverage around our buildings, internally as well as externally. Right now also, some of you might be aware, we use a visitor check-in system called Raptor. It goes in when people come in, they use the system and they check in. What we're finding is that Raptor, just like any other technology out there, always has updates to keep their system running. Those updates, obviously, throughout all of our buildings have to occur. And when they do occur, it usually comes with some type of new technology, new equipment. So we're using that money to keep that technology and equipment up to date so that our schools are able to use that system, use that check-in technology to assist them in keeping our schools safe and secure. Items with Raptor, their printers, for example, they just outdated their old printers and are now using a new system. So we had to quickly purchase printers for all of the schools so that they could continue to print the name badges that everybody's having to use when they come and visit a school or check in. We're also finding that some of our Raptor computer systems are coming into life, so we're keeping them new and fresh and updating them with FAC money. Some upcoming projects that we're looking at for with FAC money is trying to get all of our schools numbered on exterior doors, provide a consistency across the district. This will help in the elementary side. It's kind of a help for the school. They can say, hey, 5th grade is in room number 5, so go line up at room number 5, and parents as well as students can have that visual reference for what door number 5 is. But on the safety and security side, it also speeds up response from first responders should they need to get into the building. It gives us a more direct line into the building. And it's just, it adds that additional layer of security for us. As well as we're looking at another threat assessment model to help with our management of our threat assessments. That system, as you can imagine, houses a lot of information. And so we need to make sure that we have a system that can withstand the amount of information it has to hold and to manage it effectively so that we can provide details and information back out accordingly. And so that's kind of what we're using on the FAC fund. And I know that Crystal Dawson will be able to help on some of that technology side as far as how we're implementing it into the district.
Crystal, you want to go ahead and turn on your camera, introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do, and add on to what Anthony has said, and then we'll open it up for questions.
You bet. So my name's Crystal Dawson. I'm a client engagement manager for IT. I help out the safety and security department by acting as a project manager for a lot of the safety and security system installations that go into the district. So that's me. And kind of building on what Anthony was saying, I wanted to add a little more detail to the card access piece. So So we used grant funds along with 5C funds to replace all of our card readers in the district recently. We ended up replacing 197 card readers with 5C funds. And as part of that, we implemented a new standard to where each front door was equipped with a keypad reader as opposed to just a regular card reader, which will allow emergency personnel really quick access into the building if they didn't have a card assigned to them. And we also purchased more licensing and added card readers throughout the district in that project. And so these new card readers allowed us to move to a more secure type of ID badge. Our previous badges were not as secure, easily replicated through technology that hackers might possess. So we wanted to move to a more secure format of ID card. So that was kind of the reasoning behind replacing all of those ID readers. As part of that, we moved the ID badge issuance and replacement of staff personnel cards onto the schools. Previously, the comm center was in charge of that, and this would allow new employees a much more streamlined process to get their ID. They wouldn't have to make a special trip into the ESC to the comm center to get their badges. And also a big reason we did that was to make sure that old lost ID cards are deactivated immediately. So if an employee lost their card and just didn't have a chance to get up to the ESC, that ID card would continue to work on our schools, which isn't good. So we moved that functionality to the offices, and that has been a very successful project. They love being able to issue their own ID cards. Along with that, we've purchased ID badge printers for each school, as well as readers in order to issue those badges with 5C funds. So we are currently going through all of our buildings and replacing kind of off-brand security cameras with cameras that are branded, a Vigilon branded. A Vigilon is our current system for the security cameras. So we're going through and replacing all of our kind of outdated original cameras that aren't a Vigilon branded with 5C funds. And like Anthony was mentioning, we've started replacing some of the end-of-life Raptor kiosks in our remote secured vestibules with new models. They were just, of course, about every 5 years, you have to replace those machines. So we are in the process of doing that as well. And so schools can also request more cameras for their location to provide coverage to areas that either didn't have good coverage or didn't have any coverage at all. And those requests go to the security department. The security department visits the school and determines if the requested camera is intended to provide student security as opposed to, for example, just aimed at a parking lot for vandalism or tagging or that kind of thing. So if it's deemed a student security camera, then 5C would cover those funds as well. And I think that's pretty much all I have.
All right. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Anthony. What questions surface as you hear from our security specialists?
Yeah, regarding the security cameras and the request coming to you, is the district proactively going through and evaluating the schools to for coverage, or is it just on request only?
It's twofold. So when we are out at the school, we are constantly in communication with administration and staff, seeing their necessity or their need, as well as their it maybe more of their desire. And then we look at more of the security angle and see if it's needed, and then we work together based on that. Sometimes we'll get requests in from staff just based on something we've missed or an addition that was built, within the last couple of years, and we're starting to find that the way that school is functioning is now having more kids in that area than it did before. So it's an ongoing and constant process.
Is there a minimum standard set for each school?
No.
So I wanted to add on to what Anthony was saying, with the most recent bond that passed, we did go through and we installed security cameras at all of the elementary schools. That elementary schools previously did not have any security cameras installed. And we also replaced all of the high school and middle school cameras with the latest and greatest high definition cameras with bond funds. So a recent evaluation of each building has been done.
Thank you.
I know high schoolers carry, and middle schoolers carry ID. Do their key cards open doors? What's the level of their access with those cards?
So high school kids will have access to outside exterior doors that are equipped with a card access reader, as well as obviously staff. And then down to the middle school, we'll give them access usually through the front doors, is where administration has asked that the kids can have access if they have access at all.
And what's been the district's experience if a student loses a card? Is it up to the student or the family to report that to the school district, or how do and then can those cards are also deactivated once they're reported lost?
Yep. Yeah. So if the student loses a card, we ask that they notify their office manager. The office manager is then able to go into the system and deactivate the card. We also have a feature where we can turn the card off and then say they went home and found it sitting on their bed or something like that, and they reach back out and say we found it, we can turn it back on.
Oh,
but
that's
if
great.
if it's lost, we would deactivate it completely and issue a new card.
And does that get reported very often? I was just curious how engaged or students are in reporting if they lose or if they just try to kind of skate, just use their friends or just try to get by without it because they're maybe embarrassed. I don't know.
Yeah, so it happens actually quite frequently. I think the schools are really good at working with the students. Most of the time they believe they lost it, but it's probably in their backpack somewhere, or it's in their room or their car. So we definitely turn off a lot more cards than we deactivate. We are able to turn back on.
Okay, that's great.
We go home and find them.
I suppose kids these days are getting much more used to, they're just growing up with it. They're more accustomed to it than somebody from my generation. I also just wanted to comment, I think it's great that you're giving the schools all the ability to do, print their cards and provide that service, because I think that probably just makes everything flow better and it's actually more secure. And also numbering the doors at schools, that's going to help everybody. That's going to make parents and students, you say, to know what number door you're looking for rather than trying to describe, where it is in relationship to the playground equipment or something like that, which I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we spoke with a lot of our elementary principals, and that was their big thing, is trying to explain geographically to some parents that this is not going to work. So they can say, hey, you need to go find door 5, and that's your home room. Helps the kid feel a lot more comfortable. Parents feel comfortable because they know where their student's going.
Any other questions?
I guess my own question is, looking beyond the 5C monies, it sounds, because that's been used for a lot of things. I mean, I didn't realize some of the schools at the elementary level didn't even have cameras before. So when are we going to be looking at needing, I guess reinvestment is ongoing. I guess my question is, how much 5C money is left, and what kind of timeline are we looking at for needing, replenishment of those funds?
Yeah. So a camera's lifespan is between 5 to 7 years typically. So I believe it is the intent to use 5C to replace those as they come end of life.
So it's
Okay.
hard to get an accurate answer. It's hard to give you a definitive because it is 5 to 7. And obviously, some will start going faster than others, and so that's where it's going to be an ongoing process as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Anthony, Crystal, thank you so much. Appreciate your work.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Sonia, is Mr. Fobert on tap?
Not yet. Let me check on him.
As someone new to the FAC meetings on a monthly basis, these are really fascinating. You guys get a tremendous amount of information in a short period of time to kind of digest and work through. Thank you for your willingness to engage in all of this.
Well, it's really, I mean, for anybody who really wants to know all about all the systems in the district, there really is no better way to find out, because we get to hear from staff from so many different departments. It's really interesting, and I think I know it gave me a really deep appreciation for just so much was happening that you don't know. I mean, when you're a parent, you're just thinking about what's going on with your kids' grades and their teachers, and are they happy, and what's the climate at the school, environment at the school, but there's so many moving parts.
Yeah, there really are. There really are. All right. Good morning, Mr. Fobert. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. I am doing well. It's nice to be with you.
Good. So Bo Fobert is our Chief Academic Officer, and he is going to continue with more of the informational pieces around how we spend our 5C funds.
Great. Thank you, Priscilla. FAC team, it's good to be with you again this year. Remember, I can't believe it's been a year since I was last with you to give you an update on 5C expenditures that are specific to our learning services department. I believe Sonia shared with you, hopefully recently, kind of an updated document that's capturing 5C spending that we do in learning services. And I'm not going to talk through that line by line. I'm going to tease out some specific changes and adjustments we've made since I was last with you. And then I have a request of you, something for you to consider, and then would be happy to take some questions, of course, as well. So if you have that document, you can follow along as I kind of talk through each of our 5C spending buckets in learning services. So the first one and the most significant to our work is the 5C line that speaks to updating our learning materials, resources, and textbooks. This is where we do all the purchasing for curriculum and materials to support all of our content areas throughout the system. This would be core content and all elective content throughout our system. Many of these expenditures on here you saw last year, and that's because we often enter in multi-year agreements with vendors for different curriculum. Obviously, we don't want teachers using a new resource year over year. And so typically we make arrangements with vendors where we pay generally between a 4 and 6 year interval for the use of their product. More and more of these are becoming digital, which has the advantage of being routinely updated. This is particularly useful when we're talking about social studies materials, science materials, where we're able to avoid what has typically been a element in the past where things become outdated and not as recent. We still do use a lot of textbooks and consumable materials, but more and more of our curriculum resources are becoming digital, and that's reflected throughout this document. Couple pieces that I point out that are new and different from last year are aligned to our continued work to fully embrace evidence-based science of reading practices throughout our system. You'll see a note in there about a portion of a core elementary reading resource. It doesn't really capture the totality. That was a multi-million-dollar procurement on our part. We were very fortunate enough to be able to use some ESSER grant money and a state level grant to pay for the vast majority of that adoption. But there is still some balance that we're paying for out of this 5C money. You'll also see in the special education line that we have a number of resources that are aligned to more intensive intervention for kids that have needs around developing their reading skills. And these span elementary all the way through high school, where we're making sure that our teachers and learning specialists have resources that are aligned to evidence-based practices and developmentally appropriate materials for students throughout our system. You'll also notice in there a line specific to 5-Star Online Academy. Obviously, when you're teaching in a synchronous and asynchronous environment, you need a curriculum that really flourishes in that space. And Edmentum is one of those places that has a pretty vast repertoire of online materials that our teachers in 5-Star Online make use of. Last piece I'll point out is we had really outdated, almost 15, 20-year-old materials in our German classes at the high school level, and those German teachers were thrilled. I'm not going to try to pronounce all of those pieces in there. I guess I am going to try BND, Doc Mall. They were really thrilled to get updated resources for those classes. So moving forward, we get into a lot of our 5C buckets pay for staffing. The vast majority of work in a school district is obviously putting well-trained professional folks out in our building, in our classrooms. And this next line around interventionists at elementary and K-8 has been a huge benefit and necessary, frankly, as we continue to support kids out of the pandemic and moving forward in both reading and mathematics. This line is completely tapped out. We run right on a razor's edge in being able to afford these FTE that are mentioned in here. There's no room for any more. And I'm very hopeful that the inflationary adjustments that we see with our mill in 5C will allow us to keep that as is, but you're going to hear shortly that in some places we are not keeping up with the staffing we have aligned to 5C, and we've got some difficult choices to make moving forward. Last year, I was really excited to share with you that after many years of development that we were able to put this teacher leadership piece in place, which really is about having instructional coaching flourish in our system. And it's leadership in the sense that it's building teachers' capacity and also creates a really good pipeline for us to develop eventual school leaders. We know some of our best principals in the system were excellent instructors and really knew instruction in and out well. And so creating more folks in our system who serve as instructional coaches that work side by side with teachers to build their capacity to teach well to have meaningful impact with kids benefits us not only in that moment as we improve teacher practice, but also over time as we do develop leaders in our system that either can stay in that lane, continue to serve as coach and teacher leader, or if it's their passion to move to our system to serve as leaders at the building level or district level and still have that really strong foundation. So you can see here, we now are not hopeful. We have implemented in this fiscal year an increase in coaching at all levels. And I can tell you more than anything else, every time I interact with our high school principals, high school leaders, being able to finally have instructional coaches in our high school has been significant and has really allowed much more focus on teaching and learning to happen at our high schools than ever before. It's not something in the history of Adams 12 we've ever been able to provide coaching at the high school level, and that's made a huge difference. And I'm really pleased as you look at the financial note at the bottom that we believe we can go at minimum of 6 years out before we're going to run into a potential cliff with funding around this coaching piece. So thrilled to get that off the ground and running. It's had a huge impact in our system, and we're very thankful that we're going to be able to continue that well into the future. This next piece section in this document is where I have a request of you and something to consider. So you can see that this box is really about providing counselors, social workers, and mental health support in our schools. At the time that Elevate came to be and then 5C went through, we had no idea that a global pandemic was on the horizon. And I can tell you, I am so thankful, and our system is so thankful that we had the foresight to see already, absent a pandemic, that we had some real needs around mental health and student social emotional well-being. And these folks have been instrumental before, during, and now after the pandemic of helping really reset ourselves. It was hugely disruptive. There's still a lot of dysregulation that's come from that time. We are making headway. We are seeing signs of recovery, and yet we're not there yet. What's happening in this line is we now have more staff aligned to this particular 5C line than we can afford over time. The compensation costs of these people, which are highly trained, have very specific licensures, are not keeping up with the year-to-year inflationary adjustments. And we're at a point now as a system that we have to move approximately 9 of these folks that are in this current bucket to a new funding source. That's not a small number of highly trained people that we have to find a new spot for. Which brings me to the next bucket, because it's connected to this. So you can see that the following piece really talks about developing and implementing social emotional learning curriculum. We've done a lot in that space since 5C passed, and you can see the list of programs that are in use throughout our system here in Adams 12 at every level. Other than some additions we need to make at the preschool level, we're at a point where we're pretty static with the actual procurement of curriculum. We're running an underspend in this year to year of about 1.2 million. Because once you purchase curriculum, you don't need to keep purchasing it year to year. Once these are in place, we're able to use them even with the subscriptions at a rate that doesn't end up pushing against the limit. And as I reflect on the pressures of the people that actually support this curriculum, that support the outcomes that's intended of these curriculum, my request of you as a FAC, and you're uniquely positioned to accept this recommendation or consider it, is I would like to be able to move some of the staff that are currently in that previous line, counselors and social workers, into this line that's about developing and implementing social emotional curriculum. My rationale for that is they are the implementers of that. They are the supporters of that. And it seems wasteful to continue to carry that underspend in that space where we have pressures around staffing related to similar work in another 5C line. So with the FAC's support, I would like to be able to engage our finance team in determining how many of the folks, the 9 FTE roughly, that we have to move out of the counselor and social work bucket, we might move to the develop and implement curriculum bucket to lessen the impact overall in our general fund moving into a budget season that already has many pressures, as you're well aware, as our FAC. So I would sincerely ask for you to consider that request. I think it's still aligned to the intent of the work of both of these buckets. We don't always have perfect foresight when we set up these lines. Many years ago, I'm feeling good. The team feels good about where we're at with the curriculum piece, but we could use some of that underspend to maintain the staff we have to support these curriculum. The final few pieces on here are very static. There's been no change in these. These are just maintaining work that we've done. So we've expanded preschool, which again, great foresight. We're on the cusp of universal preschool here in the state of Colorado, and having that additional FTE is really allowing us to offer as robust a preschool program as we can to our community. I'll be straight with you that I think in subsequent years, we're going to have to ask for even more expansion in that space. We offer preschool at 18 of our elementaries and K-8s, and we need to add many more, I think, to fully embrace the intent of universal preschool. But I'm certainly happy that we expanded it a few years ago, but that is just a static and ongoing line, and we hit the mark every year there. Same with CTE spaces. There is some contemplation that even though we're slowly eating into some underspend there as salaries increase, that we may this next fiscal year be able to add maybe a little bit of additional FTE for expansion of CTE programming, but we're just on the front end of considering that. As you can see from my conversation around counselors and social workers, I always want to be really careful about how much FTE we end up loading into these, because even with those inflationary adjustments, they rarely keep up with the compensation pressures that we have over time with those. So that's my report and my request. Happy to answer questions, follow up on anything that I said. I really appreciate having the opportunity to give you this update and to humbly request your consideration of some adjustment of staff within some of these 5C buckets.
Great. Thank you, Bo. Let's start with what questions might have surfaced, and then we can move into some dialogue based on your request.
Well, I had questions. Let me look at there were a lot of things I thought of while you were talking. Well, I guess one question is, so is this back at the top line, mind research, the new math curriculum? How can I just ask how that's going? Like what the feedback is on that?
Sure. So that's not new. It's more commonly in our system known as the ST Math. That's after the dash there. Mind Institute is the parent company. ST Math is something we've had in place at the elementary level for about 4 or 5 years now. It's a supplement to our core everyday mathematics program. It's a digital program that really works on conceptual understanding in mathematics. It's highly interactive. When I go out and visit schools, I see a lot of goal setting. It tracks goals over time for our kids. Feedback is pretty strong in that space right now. We'd be really hesitant not to continue to provide that as a supplement. I generally hear positive things about it.
Great, thank you. And I guess I would just say my feedback on your request to move some funds to support social emotional learning. I would support that completely. Personally, I mean, it has to be a committee decision, but that's my feedback on that. And I'll let somebody else ask questions while I think of what else I wanted to ask you. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Kathy.
Other questions or just other levels of support or concern for Bo's request?
Hi there, Bo, I guess I'm just trying to understand, so we're asking to move from the underspend over, is that all? I guess I'm just not understanding the full breadth of the request, sorry.
Sure, Kelly, thanks for the follow-up. This would not move money. The alignment in the buckets would stay the same. So right now, the curriculum bucket, I believe, is $750,000 a year that we set aside for curriculum. Right now, we're over time running an underspend of about 1.2 million in that, because once we bought curriculum, we don't need to keep buying it. What I want to be able to do is to move some of the staff that are in the counselor, social worker, elementary cell line into that curriculum line, knowing that they are the topic of that line is develop and implement curriculum. They are the implementers of that. So rather than moving the money, I want to move the people into that line where we would do curriculum and staff within that 5C bucket.
Okay, and I guess Kathy or Priscilla, I'm just trying to think, is that really an audit committee thing, or is that something that has to go to the board? I don't recall ever making a decision like that.
You know, I think what we're just looking for is in true transparency to be able to have the conversation with you to gauge a level of support from all of you. And then we would engage in further conversations with the superintendent at the cabinet level, as well as with the Board of Education. We just want to make sure that we are honoring the role that you all provide as members of this committee.
That's exactly right, Priscilla. If you guys weren't supportive of it, we would go no further, but other people would have to be involved in that work.
It truly makes fiscal sense, in my opinion. So I would wholeheartedly support that.
Thank you.
I do have one other question for you, Bo, on the Leadership Academy. This is something that I'd heard about from some friends of mine that are teachers. So I'm excited to see that it's getting off the ground. What are the next steps on that one going forward?
So I think the next steps are just maintenance at that point. So the real big lift was prior just getting to a point where we could maximize that money to add these leadership positions in our system. So now I think we're in a state of program evaluation. What are the impacts we're seeing with instructional coaching? What are we noticing about opportunities for teacher leadership and growth in our system, both at the school level, near the classroom, principal, assistant principal? We're in that state, I think, of monitoring right now and making sure it has the intended impact. I don't believe we're contemplating any changes in terms of how we're using the money, this being just the first year that we've had it completely built out.
Sure. Okay, excellent. Thank you for sharing.
You bet.
Others? Questions? Feedback?
Another just a positive is thank you for supporting the world language curriculums. I know I will share one thing in terms of this. I mean, this is not finance related, but and I shared this at my kids' school too. Both my boys are in high school. The world language CTE is great. I don't want to touch it. I want to support it. I also want to support world language, and because of the popularity of CTE programs, I have heard that I don't want to say they're recruiting. I'm just saying that they go into this. I know they go into the schools for like 2 weeks, are available to talk to people. That's not the same option that is actually presented to some of the electives, as I understand it. So please correct me if I'm wrong. That I just want to make sure that we're making students aware of all of the electives and that we're supporting all of those. That's one. If I had a wish list, because of my own high school experience in another state, which was mostly in another state, and something that my kids, especially my oldest, would have really, I think, excelled in, is adding speech, forensics, speech and debate. I think it may somehow, I don't know if that's just a club activity or if it be something long-term plan to add that into curriculum, because I think that would be something that would really, we're a great district, and that I think would be a great offering to look at. So that's, I guess that's an area of concern. I get the CTE, how important that is. Back in my day, it was shop, it was all under the same roof, and things have changed obviously in the many decades since, but so that's just feedback on that. So thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Kathy, and it's timely. I'll share a few things with that. First of all, a huge addition to our learning services team in the last couple of years is an elective coordinator. So in the past, coordinating electives was a job that Priscilla did, that I did, among the other things. Megan Kane did it, and it was always, just that +1. And being able to have a person that is fully dedicated to supporting music, art, PE, world language, health, has been a game changer, because they're getting some leadership and some support, whether it's updating curriculum, writing new units of study, getting opportunities to engage in professional learning. It's been huge. Your point about CTE recruitment is well taken. I think some of that is the fact that we need to infuse more CTE in our home high schools. Right now, a lot of that recruitment is getting over to a Future Forward campus and trying to get them there. And related to your point about developing more elective options, so we're in this blueprint work right now, and a theme that's coming up, I'm on the team that's really thinking about new programming and opportunities, is a lot more options for kids to explore passion areas and areas of interest in a way that still ensures they get the core, but opens up some opportunities to really explore beyond that and to deepen our portfolio and allow more easy on-ramps and exit ramps for kids to explore. So I think when Blueprint comes into fruition, what you're describing around forensics, more opportunities perhaps for visual arts, robotics, there's a lot of things that we've heard mentioned in that space. I believe that will be part of a Blueprint proposal coming forward.
Great, that's exciting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
Can I make ask a question? This is Christina. Bo, do you have the name of the electives coordinator that we could reach out to?
Sure. His name is Clay Stansberry.
Okay. Clay Stansberry. And for this, and I asked I didn't know if it was pertinent to this information or to this meeting today, but for example, like financial literacy and in increasing that. So often, as I have talked with principals, they just sort of hand it to a social studies teacher or a math teacher instead of someone with an actual finance background. And so I've actually been working with Stargate to create a financial literacy curriculum for them. And I think that would be something wonderful to offer to students. Thanks.
So another very timely question. We have just completed developing a personal financial class that's going to be a requirement of our juniors starting next year. And it's requiring us to rework our scope and sequence at the high school level. It's going to take a few years to transition, but we heard very loud and clear that a traditional economics course was not really as relevant as personal financial literacy. And so beginning next year, every junior will get a full semester of a specific PFL course that will be part of their graduation requirements. We're thrilled to bring that on. We've had a lot of good folks in our system. Hillary Wimmer, who is a teacher of the year, runs our School of Business at Mountain Range, has been integral to that curriculum development. And we're glad that PFL is not going to be an elective or a choice, but is going to be something that we provide to all of our students starting next year. And so that was a 2-year process to kind of rework our whole scope and sequence, but it's going to be time well spent.
Great. And is there any sort of requirement for credentials for the teachers that are asked to teach that course?
So in the state of Colorado,
to see if they're a certified financial planner or anything like that?
Yeah. Not currently in the state of Colorado. That
Okay.
those standards do exist under the social studies continuum. So in field would be somebody has business, has social studies,
Sure.
those elements. So currently it does not. We are providing a pretty rigorous professional development course as a precursor to teaching that to all of our teachers who will do it in the system, but there aren't specific state requirements at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you both.
I have a quick question, follow up on that. Is that going to replace the economics class?
It does. It does. Economics will still be available in our system as
Is
an
there any way
elective.
to intertwine those? I think there's a great opportunity for synergy there between discussing economics and your personal finances and how so that when they're listening to I think kids need to start learning when they're listening to the news about the economy, they understand that it's not just out there, it impacts them and it's going to impact their personal finances.
So let me clarify something there. That kind of economics is intertwined. When we're talking about macro, micro, like Keynesian, those kind of things, those are going to be integrated when they're learning world history, when they're learning US history.
Okay.
We had them all. It was just like an econ course. And for kids, that kind of abstraction outside of the historical pieces weren't really effective. So there's still going to be a standalone econ course for people that are interested in that pathway. But the macro micro that fit within history will be part of history courses, and the economics that you're talking about, the forces that impact our financial decisions, are very much a part of that PFL course.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Priscilla, I hate to cut it off, but I'm supposed to be down with preschool right now, and I want to hustle down there. If there's any other questions, collect them for me and I'll happily get back to folks.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for all your time, Bo. We appreciate you and the work that you lead.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Any other questions that you might have that either I can answer or I can funnel back to Bo? Okay. Can I get those of you who have not yet weighed in on Bo's request, just to kind of gauge a level of support or a lack of support, so that we can take your feedback forward as we would have further conversations with Cabinet, the Superintendent, and the Board of Education?
Yeah, this is Christina. I am in full support of it. I really appreciate Bo's that he mentioned and emphasized that this would enable the counselors and social workers to keep their full licenses, so that the district ends up getting workers who are fully licensed. So I think that's worth paying for.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I agree. I support it. It makes sense.
Thanks, Meg. Josh, Venus.
I support it. Actually, when you guys were talking about financial costs, I'm thinking, oh, how about tax practice? That's because my son is taking tax practice and he is volunteering at VitaSite, this volunteer income tax site for lower income people. And I feel, oh, it's so useful, because in this country, since you're born and until you die, you have to deal with income tax returns.
Right. Yeah, that's a great thing. It's a great skill for some of our students to learn. And it's a wonderful community service aspect of that programming. It really does help certain members of our community that need some additional support. So I think it's great that he's participating in that.
Yeah, I don't need to worry about his income tax return anymore.
Good.
Yeah.
Josh, do you want to weigh in?
No, I think I remain neutral on the neither support nor go against it.
Okay.
Just not enough information.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So Kathy, I think you guys have a little bit of work time scheduled right now. So